Hey, Razvax here. Today we're doing a quick comparison of the Holosun AEMS, a optic I will be reviewing shortly, assuming YouTube clears my videos. This is a small slice of that pie with passive aiming under night vision. That is, you look through the device to aim without the use of a laser. We'll be looking at the Holosun AEMS, the Aimpoint Pro, the Eotech EXPS 3-2, and some other optics thrown in there. This was a very intentionally dark environment, far away from cities, to really stress these optics and kind of exasperate the differences between them. When looking at this footage, be sure to compare relative performance difference instead of absolute performance, as cameras really suck at accurately portraying night vision. Okay, it's worth noting before getting into this, the passive aiming is incredibly light dependent. If there is a decent amount of light, either moonlight or splash from a city, or just straight up lots of ambient sources like a street light or something, passive aiming works like a charm. It's almost like shooting in the day. However, as you noticed here, passive aiming's performance or quality or whatever you want to call it falls off of a cliff in extremely dark environments, and it's functionally non-usable past 60 yards. Once again, this test is more of a relative performance, right? Passive aiming isn't useless at 80 yards. It just happens to be useless at 80 yards when it's very, very dark. And this sort of speaks to the reality that, in my opinion, passive aiming is always a secondary backup option when you absolutely have to use it, and should never really be considered a primary option, as it is simply just not that great in dark environments at engaging beyond essentially point-blank ranges. Right? Okay, let's move on. To the user, because once again, the camera doesn't really show well the differences, the nuances between the optic, I found the performance of the AEMS and the Eotech were quite close. I personally preferred actually using the AEMS to the Eotech when actually doing shooting at targets, because I find the large reticle actually obscures a portion of the target, and I'm already struggling to see said target, so I don't want extra stuff in the way. Raw performance in terms of light transmission, the Eotech was about 10% better, to put a rough number on it. You did notice some distortion through the AIMS and a little less light transmission, but frankly speaking, it didn't really matter here, nor in other situations where I used these optics, and at the end of the day, these two were functionally identical. The only other thing you could consider would be that the Eotech is much easier to set up for night vision, having a dedicated NV button, but that's neither here nor there. The Aimpoint Pro's performance is functional, I'll say, to about 30 yards, and right at that 30-yard mark, the performance essentially falls off a cliff in this lighting condition and is useless. The RMR does fairly well, as the dot essentially floats in front of you in space and the housing fades away. But it's worth noting, and this was not at all conveyed on camera, the RMR has similar light transmission to the Aimpoint Pro, but because you have that open effect, it's not nearly as noticeable. The Holosun 403, which was not shown here, really, is basically has no light transmission, and the illumination is just simply too bright to be used in truly dark environments, so that's just simply a no-go. I didn't bother using it anymore for the test. I'm going to leave it at that. Go watch Hops. Go to Hops' channel, linked up here. He does a lot of RDS under night visions, more than I ever cared to do. So go check his stuff out, and he covers a lot of different red dots under nods. The short of this is the AIMS is very impressive under night vision and is in that upper tier of night vision performers. In this condition specifically, it stood toe-to-toe with the Eotech and could get us to about 60 yards, at which point the target basically blends into the environment, and without an illuminator, you're not doing any passive aiming. Okay, that's been some brass facts for you. Note, this is just a small section. I will be uploading a full review of the AIMS review coming up here real soon, assuming YouTube behaves. If you enjoy this type of content, maybe consider hitting up Subscribestar, link down below. This channel operates at a loss, so everything that you put over there helps in sustaining this channel long term. That being said, if you're not in the mood for that, or it's just simply not in the cards, hey, commenting down below is pretty good. I love reading comments, seeing other people's experience, shit posts, so on and so forth. Anyway, it's been fun. I'll see you guys around, and I'll see you on the AIMS review.